to say.
Man, what is going on, everybody? Filmjet is back with another one, and I am glad to be back. It's been a little while, but now we're here. I'm gonna get into Andor in a little bit. I'm gonna finish talking about that, and I'm gonna drop an episode to finish the year, basically talking about what I watched this year, what I liked, what I didn't like, and talk about what to expect going forward. So I'm gonna try to drop like 3 or 4 podcasts in the next few days. And I know that's a little unorthodox, but I really just want to get Andor over with and then move on to the next thing. So, like I said, I'm glad to be back and I'm just going to get into Andor episode 4. So, the last thing that happened was Cassian being on the run after killing that guard and ends up getting help from Luthen Rail, who helps him escape. And this episode starts off with them being on Luthen's ship, and Luthen is trying to recruit him for a job. And at first, Cassian doesn't want to do it. He just wants to be dropped off somewhere so he can be on his way. And then eventually he comes around because Luthen actually gives a nice speech about fighting the Empire and risking it all for something real. So the job will be to steal the quarterly payroll for an entire Imperial sector. And you can tell this definitely piques Cassian's interest. And now we're back on Coruscant. You gotta love how Coruscant looks in this show, man. I really love how they've done all the buildings and even all the interior places. And I love how we get to see the inner workings of the Imperial officers. For most of the time in Star Wars, we kind of just see them here and there, but we don't really see what their jobs are like on a day-to-day basis. And I think showing that part in this show was really interesting. And we cut to Aldani, and this looks like an interesting place. And there's a nice little scene here where Luthen gives Andor his Kyber crystal necklace. So Andor meets Val, and she's clearly not happy that Luthen brings another person to this job right when they're about to do it. And I like this part when they're walking to their spot and some TIE fighters fly by. That sound, it just never gets old, especially from the perspective of people on the ground. I really like how they really give you that feeling that you're in trouble if you hear that TIE fighter sound. And I love how Luthen puts on a whole disguise when he goes to Coruscant and essentially plays a character, being this sort of eccentric museum owner type of guy. It's so funny because it's completely different than the person we usually see him as, this kind of tough guy, no nonsense old guy. Episode 4 also has the start of the beef between two Imperial officers. And this show is just such a web of interesting characters and plot lines. And episode 4 is also where we meet Eben Moss Backrack's character, and this is an actor that I know from most recently The Bear and The Punisher, which he plays Micro on. And I think he's such an underrated actor. Everything that I've seen him in so far, he was just great. It's nice to see him in Star Wars because we all know this is the kind of role that can catapult somebody's career. And these people that Andor meets on this planet literally have AK-47s for blasters. I was trying to look at them really close, and it doesn't even look like they have anything on them to separate them from the real life AKs. To make it look like something from Star Wars. They really just look like AKs. I think that's kind of funny. And we get a scene of Mon Mothma meeting Luthen in his museum, which is just a front for them trying to do rebel activity. And I really like how this show actually makes Mon Mothma a character because this is a person that we see popping up here and there in the original trilogies and even Star Wars Rebels, but we don't really see her do anything. So to really see her role in the rebellion is really cool because we do know that she's one of the people that started it, from the political side. And I also got to say the new actor that plays my Mothma looks just like the woman from the original trilogy. It's kind of insane. So, and there's all kinds of Easter eggs in Luther's museum. Probably the most notable being the set of Mandalorian armor, and there's this helmet that it looks like it's the exact same helmet as Starkiller's Sith helmet from The Force Unleashed. If anybody's played that game, so that's really cool to see. And also the shoulder pauldron on that armor looks like the shoulder pauldron that we see on the clones in the 2003 Clone Wars show. I don't know if that's what it's supposed to be, if that's where they got it from, but look at a picture of Phase 1 Captain Fordo and then put it next to this set of armor in Andor, and the shoulder pauldron looks pretty much the same. So I don't know if that's just me reaching or if that's actually true. So, and again, there's a whole bunch of Easter eggs. I'm not going to point all of them out. I'm sure there's plenty of people on YouTube that have done Easter egg breakdowns of the show, but this was a really cool scene, and I'm glad they put it in the show. And watching a show for the second time is always cool because you notice little details here and there. I'm not really gonna talk about later episodes right now, but I noticed that we can see Mon Mothma's driver is trying to spy on her, and this woman that works with Luthen in his museum shop is clearly trying to distract him so that Luthen can talk to Mon Mothma in private and talk freely. And I'm probably gonna say this 100 more times, but this show just looks so good. The inside of Mon Mothma's house is insane, and the costume design, it just blows me away every time. Just looking at what Mon Mothma's wearing and what her husband is wearing, you could really tell that people really worked hard on this, and the care and the level of craftsmanship is just insane. So, it's always nice to see stuff like that. So episode 4 ends, and now Andor and the rest of the team have a plan to steal this payroll from the Empire, and it has to do with this phenomenon in space that's gonna allow them to fly away before anybody else can chase after them. And this was another great episode. After the third really fast paced and action packed episode, this was another slow one. So it looks like the show is going to follow this pattern of two slow ones and then a third action packed episode. So it'll be three, 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 three. So we get four mini story arcs within the season. So, after this episode, it definitely makes me feel more hype and really want to see the next episode. There was a lot of interesting things in this in episode 4. Andor meeting this crew that he's supposed to do a big job with, and naturally they don't really like him at first because they meet him really late, right before they're supposed to do this job, and nobody knows him. They haven't spent any time with him. They don't know what he's about. They don't know where he came from. So, of course, they're going to feel a little nervous about this. And we get to see the inner workings of the Empire's high ranking officers. Cyril Karn got fired from his job, and it looks like he went back to his mom's house. So this really sets the stage for an interesting episode 5. We see more evolution and growth from a bunch of different characters. The Empire officer lady, I forgot her name. She's having a really interesting arc in this show. So yeah, once again, a great episode, and I really enjoyed it. So episode 5 was another one of these slower ones that is really meant to build it up towards episode 6. And I think it does a really great job. We get a lot of interesting character moments. We see Sarah Karn go back with his mother, and she treats him like a child. He's sitting there eating space cereal, and he's got like blue milk or something. I thought that was pretty interesting, and she wants to call his uncle to help get him a job because obviously he got fired, and obviously he doesn't want to do that. He kind of wants to find his own way and do his own thing. And we see later in the end of the episode that he's still not letting the Cassian Andor thing go, and it gives us the hint that he's gonna pursue this on his own. And we see Skeen's jail tattoos, and Cassian knows what they are, and he seems to know a lot about everything. And we see this interesting moment where the crew is telling Cassian the plan, and they're asking him questions, and Cassian actually gives them a super valuable tip because they didn't know how they were going to do a certain thing, and Cassian was the only one who knew how to do it. And there's a few moments like that in this episode. At the part where they start practicing how to march and look like soldiers, Cassian makes a suggestion that somebody should switch sides because they're left-handed, and they ask him how he knows, and he knows everybody's handedness, and I think that was really interesting. It just really helps you realize that this is a person that's done a lot of things, he's been a lot of places, and he's actually a huge asset to this team. And even though they've been kind of weary about him, and rightfully so, he's actually a super valuable member. And there was that crazy moment when the TIE fighter flew right past everybody. I think that moment was so cool because once again, the sound is just so iconic, and really from the perspective of somebody that's on the ground, it would be pretty scary to see a spaceship fly that close, that fast, and with that noise. Yeah, you definitely know that somebody is coming if you hear that. So yeah, I think that was a really cool moment. It freaked everybody out. And if you have a really good sound system that's really loud in your house or wherever, I mean it's just a great moment. And we now see that the Empire is occupying Ferrix because of that whole debacle from episode three. They're really trying to show their power and show everybody that you're not just gonna attack our people and get away with it. Now, you've been able to kind of live away from the Empire for a long time, but now we're here. So that's definitely planting the seeds for something else in later episodes. And I think the biggest moment of this episode was when Skeen finds Cassian's kyber crystal, and everybody kind of has this big standoff, and they're wondering why does he have this? He doesn't have anything, and he has this super valuable item, and of course then Cassian ends up coming clean and tells him that he's being paid to be there, and of course the team just accepts it because they don't really have a choice. But later we get a great moment where Skeen also comes clean and tells Cassian that his brother was a farmer and he ended up committing suicide because the Empire destroyed his farm. Of course, that's really important to him. That's his livelihood. And once he lost that, I guess he felt like he couldn't live anymore. So now Skeen really hates the Empire, even though he did already. But now he wants to help kind of get back at them. That was the first time where we see a lot of these characters actually coming clean to each other, and you feel, these relationships growing. So I think that was the big moment of this episode. And we also see Mon Mothma dealing with more family issues. Her and her husband clearly don't have the best relationship because they were married out of tradition, not really because they wanted to get married. So they kind of just tolerate each other. And her daughter seems to not really be happy with her in that moment. So they have a little argument in this episode. But again, we get to see more of Coruscant, Mon Mothma, the one Imperial officer lady, trying to figure out what's going on with the stolen items. And once again, this episode is just building up to the end of this story arc in episode six, where we're finally going to see the team actually do this job that they've been talking about all this time. And once again, a great episode from this show. Of course, it looks great. The soundtrack is great every time. The show is just definitely one of my favorites from this year. So, episode six, at this point, I'm ready. I'm just ready to see that and really see this job that we've been building up towards, and we know that episode 6 is gonna be more action packed. So like after seeing 5, I'm really excited about that. Man, episode 6 is another absolute banger of an episode. This is the episode that this story arc has been building towards with the other two episodes, episodes 4 and 5, and now we're finally at 6. So we know that this team of people is gonna carry out this job that they've been talking about the past two episodes where they rob an Imperial garrison. And of course, it was an absolute banger, like I said. Action packed, great character moments. Of course, it looked great, just like every other episode in the show. And yeah, there were some pretty great moments. Even right in the beginning, we even learn more about these characters. There's a moment where Scheme tells Cassian that Towerman used to be a stormtrooper, and he also tells him that Cinta was mad when she found out because stormtroopers killed her whole family. And it's moments like this that really build up these characters and get you as the viewer to care about them because along the way we haven't really learned much about any of these people, but when you get these little bits and you see that these are reasons why people hate the Empire, it really helps you understand them and realize why people would be willing to risk their lives for something like this. And since we know that this job is taking place during the Eye of Aldani, and we learn that the Empire is not allowing the Aldani people to take part in this sacred ritual that they've been doing for who knows how long, and they're not allowing them to see the Eye of Aldani from their sacred valley. And this is a huge event for them. It's something that only happens every 3 years, so everybody kind of takes this long hike up the mountain to get there. And it's sad. It's just more of the Empire doing what it does. It comes to planets, it takes them over, it displaces people, and just strips all the resources from the planet. So it's sad. We see these people that haven't done anything to anybody, and the Empire just comes in, kicks them to the side, and does what it wants. And our people are dressed like soldiers to sneak in. And there's funny little moments when the other soldiers and even an officer doesn't really recognize them, but they don't actually realize that they're people that aren't supposed to be there. So I guess they look good enough. And there was a funny moment where the Imperials gave the Aldani people like a fur or something that I guess is supposed to be important to them, and I guess in like a little gesture of peace or something. But obviously, the Aldani people know that it's fake and that the Empire doesn't care about them, and the Aldani leader threw the fur into a fire. So I guess that shows how much the Aldani people like the Empire. And they finally sneak in and they have to reveal themselves to some people, to some soldiers, and they're holding them at gunpoint. One of the soldiers pulls out his gun and points it at one of the guys, and they're actually at a little standoff. And then the two girls reunite with the team, and Senta ends up shooting one of the guys because everybody else was hesitating. So she took that guy out so they could carry out the mission. And I think that was really a great moment because everybody else didn't want to shoot a person, but she was the one that was willing to shoot somebody. And then we get a great moment where we see the Eye of Aldani finally starting this event that we've heard about so much, and of course it looks great. We get a great shot of the sky and the valley, and we can see everything, and it just looks great. And also, cut between that, we see TIE fighter pilots getting into their ships because at this point they know what's going on and they're trying to figure out how to stop it. And they send the fighters to the area, and yeah, I think that was a really cool moment. I don't know if we've ever seen something like that before in Star Wars. I can't really think where we see the actual fighter pilots getting into their plane and taking off. I thought that was a really good scene because I don't know, something about it's just cool seeing them get it because they get in through the top of the ship, and then seeing them press all the buttons and stuff and take off was just a really cool moment. Of course, just like everything, it never goes as you plan. Even normal things in life never go as you plan. So, of course, a robbery of this magnitude doesn't go as it's planned. They get into a shootout. The lieutenant guy that they had working with them on the inside gets killed. Tamarin gets killed. And what I love about it is, of course, these are characters that we've grown to kind of like, right? We learn a little bit about them. We see them working with Cassian, and we generally want to see everybody succeed and get out of here unscathed, right? But of course, that never happens. So, we see the lieutenant get shot, Tamarin gets shot, and when they die, it isn't shown like this big moment, with the camera focusing on them and then showing every single person's reaction and, like a slow mo shot or something to where it's really like, oh my God, this person died. It's just like, oh, they're dead, and it's just moving on because the firefight is still going. So, we can't be focusing on these people that are dying when everybody else still has to get out of there. So I thought that was a really cool way to show it where it's like, okay, we're gonna show that people are dying for this stuff, but we're not showing it in a way that kind of takes you out of it. Because we've all seen those kind of deaths in shows and movies where they just stay on it for so long that you're just like, all right now, like we get it. So I think that was a really cool thing that they did in the show. And it also just shows you that sometimes people die and that's it. There's no time for anybody to stop and really take in what happened. You just have to keep going in that moment. And then later you could really reflect on what happened and stuff like that. But in that moment, you can't just stop and let yourself kind of be stuck in that moment. So yeah, I think it was also really good, but really sad that they showed it like that. And and even when they're escaping, they take more casualties. We see Karis get crushed by what they were stealing. You see, so they're stealing everybody's payroll and it's loaded up on these big carts. And they're kind of like on the Star Wars version of like slabs, right? And they're all loaded up on the ship. And Karras happened to be standing in between them, and when they took off, one of the things slid back and crushed him in between, and he got paralyzed. And it was a crazy moment because Vel wanted to just let Karras die, and Skeen was the one that told Cassian like, no, we have a doctor in a contingency plan in case anybody needs it. We need to go to the doctor and try to save his life. So it makes Skeen look like a good guy, right? And so they escape. They go to the doctor, and the whole time, I guess we might look at Vel as like, well, I guess the whole time we look at these people like, yeah, they're all good people or whatever because they're fighting the Empire. And, in that moment, Vel didn't want to take Karras to the doctor, and it was Skeen that actually made Cassian do it. But then when they get to the doctor, it's Skeen that wants to betray Vel and Karras and just take all the money for themselves so they get a bigger cut. And, you know, he ends up telling Cassian that the whole thing about his brother was a lie, and I really love this moment because Cassian shoots first. So just like Han shoots first, yes, I said it. Han shoots first. I don't really think that's a controversial thing to say anyway, but Han shoots first and Cassian shoots first, and he kills Skeen and goes and tells Vel about it, and we find out that Karras died, and it was all a bittersweet ending, right? Because multiple people on the team died. Cassian had to kill somebody that was gonna betray them, but he got away himself, and Vel and Cinta also got away. So it was very bittersweet. A lot of people died for this to happen. And in the end, we see Luthen find out about the whole thing in his museum, and then we get a scene of Mon Mothma trying to pass a bill at the Senate, and you could tell everybody in the room is just not having it. So it really shows you how everybody looks at Mon Mothma as a politician, but behind the scenes, she's leading a rebellion. So, once again, this episode was absolutely insane. I really liked every moment of it. They really played with that build up again, even within the episode. It starts off and you're just waiting for the job to start. Everybody's kind of tense. They're nervous about what's about to happen. And then once it gets going, it's like nonstop. Everybody's acting is on point. I just thought it was just a great episode, and there's one thing I saw people complaining online about the lack of aliens in this show, and I do think that it's kind of weird that they haven't shown a lot of aliens. Honestly, I think they should have at least one alien supporting character, like somebody that's in the show for multiple episodes. Because if you think about it, all the characters that we see for multiple episodes with, a good amount of speaking lines are human. There's a bunch of aliens in there. A lot of them are in the background. And episode 6 did have that four-armed doctor, but yeah, I think this show does need more aliens. But then again, the antagonist people are all part of the Empire, and we know the Empire didn't really allow aliens. So, in that regard, it should be all human because, like I said, the Empire didn't really allow aliens. They allowed a few. Like, I know, of course, Grand Admiral Thrawn is, a big player in Star Wars, and he's an alien, but he's still basically just a blue human. He's not like a Wookiee or even a Twi'lek. So, or a Zygarian, or any type of alien that doesn't really look like a human. So, yeah, the Empire didn't really allow aliens in. You could see that even in the original trilogy. There's no aliens that are stormtroopers. There's no aliens that are Imperial officers. The only one that I've seen in a show or a movie is Admiral Thrawn, I think, so far. So, yeah. But again, I wish they would put more aliens as real characters. And I think that's something that we need in Star Wars in general. I think Ahsoka might be the first alien main character that we've gotten. And that's kind of sad because Star Wars is full of aliens. And it's one of those things that seems to be it's one of those things that seems to allow a lot of freedom when it comes to designing. I know that when George Lucas was originally creating Star Wars, he didn't want any aliens that anybody has seen before. He wanted every alien in the movies to be an original design. So for them to never have an alien that was a main character until Ahsoka, and even then, her show didn't come out yet, right? The Ahsoka show. So you could say, okay, well maybe she's a main character of the Clone Wars. Well, I guess, but the Clone Wars is such an ensemble type show. I don't know if you could really say there's a main character because Ahsoka, Rex, Anakin, Obi-Wan are the main characters in it. I don't know if you could say there's one main character. If there is, it would be Ahsoka, so I'll give you that. But again, I think they need to give more aliens the spotlight in Star Wars. Like for instance, I think Jedi Fallen Order was a great opportunity. I mean, it's a video game, right? It's not like you need actors in costume or to CGI somebody. It's a video game. The whole thing is animated anyway. So, you just need a voice actor. So I don't understand why they just made it a basic human. And I like the game, and I think the guy, I forgot his name, and I think the guy's a good actor that they chose for it, but I just think that was a missed opportunity for having an alien be a main character. And it doesn't surprise me because EA is just EA. I don't even want to get into what I think about EA and what they did with Star Wars games, but they really just played it too safe in my opinion. And I think they could have let us play as an alien, maybe even a new kind of alien that we never seen before. But it would be nice to play as a Twi'lek or somebody else. I would like to see more aliens in the show and Star Wars in general as main characters. But again, episode 6 of Andor was crazy. I really loved it. I think it might be my favorite episode in the show so far. So we'll see what happens next.